I planted these 4 quince trees, Cydonia oblonga, in 1984. They are my favourite tree. But I'm going to cut them down now. Why? When you consider they are so beautiful, in the spring they have their lovely grey felted foliage, and then you have their beautiful white and pinky flowers, and then you have the beautiful fruit in the autumn, which goes golden yellow, pear-shaped, and then the winter outline of this rather sort of crazy gnarled and knotted form I think is truly beautiful. But they have a problem. When I planted them, I didn't realise that this variety, Ranger, in common with many quince varieties, actually suffers massively from quince leaf blight. And you can see the fruit, they're spotted, the leaves are spotted and falling, and all around me there's lots of leaves on the ground that are falling. And I have subsequently discovered that actually there is a variety called Serbian Gold. Sometimes it's called Leskovac, and some people say Leskovac and Serbian Gold are 2 different varieties. But anyway, there is a variety which has all their great characteristics, although the fruit are more apple-shaped than pear-shaped, and it doesn't get this dreadful quince blight. So I'm now going to cut these down, take them out, and plant more of the Serbian Gold. Now, I know I'm going to be really sad because for 10 months of the year they look amazing. And some clients where I planted these, they actually spray them, and you can spray it with Signum amongst other fungicides to stop the blight. But you imagine trying to spray a tree this size, it's really not easy. So I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to be really sad for a few years, but I've ordered some standard trees, so they'll be about this height, I reckon. And what's more, because I'm planting them virtually in the same positions as these ones, and we all know it's really bad to plant the same type of tree in the same position, but I'm going to plant them in baseless containers. So I'm going to cut these trees down to the ground, which we're going to do in a second. Then I'm going to put some Eco Max plugs into the stump to make sure they don't shoot back. And then I'm going to put the baseless pots just a little bit off the main trunk, and hopefully they will grow. And I'll hide the pots with a circle of yew trees or something like that, maybe hessian just to start with. And that will just give them that bit of extra height. So it will cheat a bit and just make them about sort of 600 or so higher. So I won't have to then spend time swooping up leaves. I won't have to look at the sort of very defoliated trees. And hopefully in 10 years' time, I will really rejoice in that I've made this very difficult decision. I was really worried when we decided to remove the mature quince. I'd loved them for almost 40 years, but now they're down. I'm actually thinking it looks way better without them. All those leaves that continually dropped and the disease look, they just were not healthy. My husband, who really threw a wobbly when I said I was going to remove the old quince, actually prefers it. So now I've got them in, and I'm going to show you what we actually did. We cut out the bases of the black plastic pots, and so they're just sitting not quite on the old stump of the quince but beside it, and they will now root through into the soil. Now many people think that's just not what you do. You have to grind out the stump, not plant anywhere near it, but we have done this in several places and it works really well. I've even put things on top of the old stump when I haven't been able to move it to one side. Not standard horticultural practice, but for me it's always worked, and it's so much simpler than grinding out stumps and moving in new topsoil, etc. So let's come and see what I'm going to do with them next. So here are the black plastic pots which they came in. So we've discutted off the bottom, and so their root ball is in contact with the soil below. This is the old stump here, which we've taken down pretty flush much to the ground. Now, first off, what I want to make sure is that on a very windy day, they don't blow over, because there's quite a bit of top to weight at the bottom. So what I always do is I put in a road pin, and here you can see this road pin. I've bashed it in with a sledgehammer. It might go in a bit more, I just did it quite quickly, but I think it's quite into the ground. As you can see, I'm not the safest person with a sledgehammer, but as long as no hands are in the way, that's okay. So I bash that in, and that holds the pot in firm because it goes right down into the soil. The next thing is I don't want this stump to grow back, and it will do. It will shoot back massively from the base. So what I do about that is I get a drill bit that's approximately the size of these, and these are Eco Plug Max. I drill about 5 holes around here, and then I push these in, and these plugs just kill the stump, and it's a very good way to stop that continual regrowth of suckers coming up from the base. Very effective. I use them a lot. Now, because this tree is actually fairly substantial, I'm going to remove some of the lower branches. Now, if it was a little whip or feathered tree that was just so high with a very thin stem, then what I tend to do is remove the lower third branches, the lower third coming up the trunk, and then for the middle third of branches on the trunk, I usually cut back to about half, and then I leave the top third of branches intact. If you take them all off and just leave the leader, what happens is the tree grows massively fast, upright, but it can snap in the wind. By leaving some of the lower branches on but cut back and reduced, it really helps to thicken up the trunk. Now this one, I'm just going to cut back purely because I want to make it look better. So I'm just going to cut all the lower thirds of them like this, so I can actually see the trunk, and there's no danger that this trunk is going to snap. It's just much too thick to do that. But that one's away, and this one's away, this one's away. So I'm just doing it purely for aesthetic purposes. And also it will help give more energy to the upright of the tree. There, I think that looks better. If I don't want to see this black plastic pot, which I don't, I'm going to temporarily just wrap around this sacking. And then what I'll do when I can get some root ball new plants is I'll just plant about 6 little bushy root ball plants, like I've done on around many other pots here and in other places. And so they will actually form a plinth around the base of the tree. But for a temporary bit, this wrap round is it's an old sack actually that came with the quince. I'll just wrap it round like so. Now finally, I'll do a better job than that later. And finally, what do you use these wonderful quince fruit for? Well, you obviously put them mixed with apple crumbles and things like that. They're delicious. Quince jelly, membrillo with cheese, all things I've made, quince jam. But one of the best ways I find is just to slice them and dehydrate them or dry them in a very low oven overnight, and they become massively more sweeter. You can just eat them just like that without adding any sugar. It's strange how cooking them really sweetens them. And it's been discovered, if you look on the scientific search engine Google Scholar, that they are a massive aphrodisiac. Not only do they make, when they experimented with rats and they fed them on quince, they ranted much more frequently and for much more prolonged periods. So quince also are amazing antioxidants, so they're a very healthy fruit. So I do think they're well worth growing, apart from the fact that they are the most beautiful trees.